Hey everybody, this is Willie. I'm back in bad as I want to be, because these days you have to be. A little history. I was doing this podcast, and I was doing it toward the end of it, investigating the deep state and the coup attempt on President Trump. And when I read a paper by Victor Davis Hanson, who laid it out that it wasn't going to happen, I realized that the next 4 to 6 years of politics, it would be the Democrats accusing the Republicans of what they actually did themselves, which is really boring, let me tell you. So I think it happened for me. So I did one more podcast on a childhood idol named Richie Roberts, who was the guy who brings down Frank Lucas in the movie American Gangster. He's a real guy. He's still around. I thought it was a real interesting story. And then I stopped, waiting for what am I going to do with the new podcast. Well, that requires a little history also. I started, when I first came to California, I started in a church religion. Actually, it's not a religion. It's not sure what to label it, but it's called Self-Realization Fellowship, and in which you are taught something called Kriya Yoga, which in this case was brought to the West by Paramahansa Yogananda, who's my first guru. And so I did that for years, and then I became a certified Kriyaban, which is a certain level of Kriya that takes a year or two to get to. And then a fair amount of time went by, and when I went to the temple, I realized that I was worshiping images of 6 people, but there was nobody alive. And somebody said to me, well, you want to meet a living Kriya master? And I said, just tell me when and where, I'll be there. So it was in Irvine, and it was Yogi Raj Satgurunath Siddhanath, my current guru, about the most powerful one in the West right now. And I was initiated into his form of Kriya Yoga, which is, for all intents and purposes, identical, which was real continuity for me. And in the initiation ceremony, he performs about 3 miracles for me. The first thing he does is he's trying to demonstrate that he is a true guru. And the first thing he does, he gives you 5 hours of samadhi. He literally puts his mind into yours, and your mind goes completely blank. And it's a blissful state, and it's an eye-opening exercise. So in this 5 minutes, I'm watching him physically transform into all 6 Self-Realization Fellowship gurus. At that point, I know I'm progressing, down the path, and the right path is the same path. So I been with him. I am a what's called a Hamsa, somebody who follows Yogi Raj, and do some serious meditation. Well, let me first play a track where Yogi Raj explains to his devotees what's coming down the pike in the next 500 years, and get with it, because it's going to get things are going to happen fast, and you're going to have to meditate more regularly and longer and all that kind of stuff. And of course, I ignored him like I ignore everybody else. And the consequences of that I'll pick up later in the story. But the next tape is of Yogi Raj telling us what's coming down the pike.
I have a question. In one of your YouTube videos recently, you said something that has very profound implications for pretty much all of humanity. And I wanted you to elaborate on that. And you said in the year 2012 that the spirit of the Kalki the next divine incarnation, will be born into the hearts of humanity. Could you talk about how that may happen, what that may do to humanity afterwards?
You see, the Kalki avatar, the Kalki Krishna, or the second advent of Christ, the work has already begun. Where servers of humanity like us are already entering and seeping your hearts and making the change in your minds and your higher mind. It is happening now. It's happening at this moment. We can't wait till 2012. We can't wait till 2700, where the work will be complete and Kalki will come. So, what I mean by this is, the 2012 effects have already started in full bloom. But you see what happened about the oil spill, then Katrina, the Hurricane Katrina, the great tsunami, 300,000 people gone, then the earthquake in Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. It's still going on. The Middle East killing themselves. Humanity is on a spree. It's hell-bent on destroying itself. If the Holocaust don't do it, humanity says, we'll do it. We'll take it upon ourselves to explode ourselves. What sort of a wisdom is this? So, what is going to happen is that the great ones are not interested in whether you explode your body to smithereens or you put, have a facelift, cosmetic facelift. They are not concerned about your apparent self, which is your physical body. They are concerned about your true self, which is your soul consciousness. And in this context, I have said that in the year 2012, the positive things will also start happening. I mean, of course, Nostradamus has said that this will happen, sky will turn red in vague language. But I tell you in specific language, I do not know why Nostro forgot to give you the positive side of it. He's only seen the dark sky of it. Didn't he see the second advent of Christ? Didn't he see the four horsemen of the apocalypse coming riding on the four horse? The first horseman is the Lord Kalki Maitreya, called the second advent of Christ. Second horseman is the Lord Vaivashvat Manu. On the third white horse is the Yoga Avatar Lahiri Mahasaya of our Kriya Yoga, who was also Balram along with Krishna and Devapi. The fourth horseman is Sri Yukteswar, the Jnana Avatar Sri Yukteswar, who was Moses in his past life. And these are the four horsemen of the apocalypse. These are the four horsemen. And what will happen in 2012 is not that they necessarily may come in front of you, like I'm in front of you just now, or they may not. And what difference does it make? Suppose I'm going to tell you I'm Moses here, I'm Sri Yukteswar here, and I'm talking to you now. You won't believe me in any case. So it's an exercise in futility. Your heart will believe, but the mind, the doubting Thomas will say, no, it cannot be. So the mind is always a stumbling block. This is the greatest challenge to the masters. How great a stumbling block? Jesus, resurrected from the dead, he went to everyone they believed. Thomas wouldn't believe. Your mind is Thomas. So he said, look, Thomas, believe me, feel my flesh and bone body, Thomas, and look at my wound marks. Feel them here. Here's where they put the nails in my wrist here. Feel it. So he felt it and believed 88%. I mean, that's pretty good. After feeling. So even after seeing, the mind goes into denial. So I'm telling you, I honor you. You are gems. You are gods. Your higher self, I honor. Your minds are idiotic. Leave the idiot. Go to your genius, leave your idiot. The idiot will always make a misunderstanding of every message that is given to you, and soon you will find yourself drowning in 2012 you'll find yourself burning in 2012. If you do not do Kriya Yoga, if you do not ingest more light, more spiritual light by Kriya Yoga, it will be difficult for you to cope with the circumstances of 2012 to 2700. Because Kriya Yoga is a pathway which will help you to override the crisis situation. That's how important Kriya Yoga is for you. And in 2012, the spirit of the Maitreya, the spirit of Lord Vaivashvat Manu, the Noah, the spirit of Moses and the spirit of Abraham, Moses Yukteswar, Abraham Lahiri Masai, the spirit of all these great masters will enter your being. Sri Yukteswar has the power to project more bodies and do a Kaya view. It's called Nirman Kaya, Nirman Chitta. I cannot exist unless it is his command to say that, to project me here and infuse in you the Spirit of God. I'm infusing in you the Spirit of God. I'm not just talking, I'm transforming you while I talk. This is the alchemy of total transformation. This is the secret of the Siddhas. They do not teach. They catch you, shake you, and wake you up. And this is why they are transforming you. This is why they transform you. This is important. And that's what I'm doing. But your mind is preventing it from being shaken and woken up. And so the Kalki Avatar will not appear in his physical form in 2012. To some he will appear, to those who are advanced. To those who are not advanced, you just see him as the Spirit Divine entering the souls of humanity. But Babaji will not enter the souls of humanity. He will enter the spirit of humanity, which is yet a subtler process, which is contained within the soul of humanity. So the soul is the highly divine mind. So the Maitreya Krishna will enter humanity as the divine mind, the spirit of the divine mind. And Babaji will enter humanity through Vaivashvat Manu as the spirit of the divine consciousness. Can you dig it? Aye. So have I answered your question? Then when will he manifest, Guru Nath? When will he manifest? He will manifest at 2012 to only a few. Then as they evolve to that state, he will be appearing and seen with Babaji to more and more people. It's just a flash of second. It's the changing of the guard, where the divine, the great ones hand over the baton to their successors. And yes, Moses will be the divine king as Sri Yukteswar, called the Manu Savarni, and Abraham will be the divine teacher, the world teacher as Yoga Avatar Lahiri Mahasaya. How much clearer do you guys want me to make it for you? Jesus comes after the four horsemen of the apocalypse. I'm sorry, because Christ has already taken the horse. Jesus, the man, although fused into the Samadhi of the Christ, does not identify totally now with the Christ, who is the eternal divine mind of humanity. And Jesus, remember, prepared for 40 days and 40 nights in the wilderness when Satan tempted him. Christ needs no such preparation. Jesus prepared for the incoming Christ. He required 40 days and 40 nights of intense meditation and fasting. That's why in the Yahudim culture, the Jewish Hebraic culture, they always say that Moses is the senior person, the senior dude. Right? Is it okay to call him that? And because Jesus, as Joshua, was with him and assisting him, and said, "Oh Lord, after you have seen Babaji, the collective Elohim, you, O Moses, Yukteswar," said Joshua Yogananda, "when shall I be one with thee?" Are you understanding? Can you help? How many of you grasp what I'm saying? Raise your hands. Okay, I gave out something which was very crucial. I don't know how many of you got it, but if you're going to be dumb, then I can't do it. It's time for me to go. I have to leave you all and go. I'm leaving this in your custody. I'll still be working in the celestial spheres. I'll still be working astrally with you. But I can't wait for too long. I'm going to give it to you, serve you with all my heart, with all my mind, with all my soul, and with all my strength. But if it's done, then what can I do? You have to be quick and aware. Please drop your rational mind and use the higher mind of intuition to see what I'm saying, see what I'm saying. Do you understand? You say I and you miss the point every time. Anyway, I accept the I. And I'm going to destroy the I before I go. To expose your divinity, your I has to be destroyed. And I is the rational mind, which comes in the stumbling block, that what you see in me you cannot believe. Then what can you? Eye is if ye see and ye see not. Eye is if ye and ye see not. Ears have ye and ye hear not. What can we do about it? Become a child of 5 in innocence. Try to get it. And this work will go on for 700 years, which is a flash in the pan. For 7 years, the changing of the baton, where the Lord Christ shall hand over to his successor, who in other terms you know as Kutumi. We in later terms know as the Yogavatara Lahiri Mahasaya, of whom Kutumi is an aspect. And of whom you call the Manu Savarni El Maurya, we in the later form know as Sri Yukteswar. Gyan Avatar Sri Yukteswar. Are they of the autobiography? Yes, they are from the autobiography of a yogi. The same Kriya masters who are mentioned in there. They, Sri Yukteswar, will be the divine king of the inner hierarchy, of the inner government of the world. And the Lord Lahiri Mahasaya will be the world teacher, the world master of the inner hierarchy of the inner government of the world. From 2012, the changing of the baton, changing of gods, the guardians of humanity will happen. And these are the true masters in the topmost hierarchy of our solar system and world system, who are the guardian wall of humanity, who are the source of the guardian wall of humanity. These Janus-faced masters look at the open skies with one face, and with the other face they're looking at the other side. They take the drastic currents from the outer universe, all the destructive currents they take into themselves, transform the poison into nectar, and with the other face and their eyes and mouth they transform the nectar to humanity. So our fragile little baby humanity in our cocoon may survive and may grow. Oh, we ungrateful humanity, O Lord, make us more grateful for what the masters are doing for us. Make us more grateful. Amen.
Kalpo Nirakar Rupo Vibhutvachatrayana Samavesamat.
Okay, bear with me here because I'm going to try and explain the inexplicable. Around January of 2019, Marianne announces that she's going to run for president. And somewhere in the same month, somewhere in the process of a 4-hour meditation, I'm contacted by and surrounded with angels. If you don't believe in them, well, what can I tell you? I believe in miracles, and you don't. Anyway, so this encounter with this angel lasted 4 hours a day in deep meditation for 5 weeks. And what I realized at the end of it, and I'm not sure how I realized anything at that point, was it was the world's most intense job interview based on your entire life history for being an assistant to this angel. And well, I didn't get the job because I'm not an angel yet, but I'm working on it. But they gave me another job based on my skill set, which is originally why they talked to me. And the assignment was, the last time I heard from this one angel, was help Marianne. Well, interestingly enough, that at one point in time, she was explaining to me, asking me if I would support Marianne Williamson for president. I said, yes, I would. I've investigated her, and I said, I'll vote for her for anything at this point. And they explained to me what they're doing up there, and it's mind-boggling. They're working on something that combines like collective evolutionary thought and A Course in Miracles concepts. And basically it's deprogramming and converting massive amounts of people to overwhelm the social media environment. We'll see what happens there, but I'm down in the grunt level. I am currently a social media warrior for Marianne, and we got some good folks in here. So you're asking yourself perhaps at this point, like, who is Marianne? That's also difficult to explain, but there's an attempt by a journalist here to explain the phenomenon. Like, wow, she knocked it out of the park in the first debate, and where's she coming from? Whatever. So I'll play this guy trying to figure out what the phenomenon is, and then we'll pick it up from there.
Of course I have a Marianne Williamson impersonation. Girlfriend, you are so on. Right? I practice it in the mirror. During the second Democratic debate in Detroit in late July, Google tracked which of the 10 candidates on stage were being searched the most on its platform during the proceedings. In Montana, it was home state governor Steve Bullock. In the other 49 states, Marianne Williamson. Which begs the question, who the heck is Marianne Williamson? Well, the short answer to that is that Williamson is one of the 24 candidates running for the Democratic nomination for president in 2020. The longer answer to that question is, well, it's long, but it is also amazing. Williamson made her name as a self-help author and spiritual guru/advisor. What a job title. According to Amazon, 7 of her 13 books have made the New York Times bestseller list, and 4 went all the way to #1. Important sidebar, Marianne Williamson and I have a combined 4 New York Times bestsellers. In the broadest strokes, Williamson preaches a sort of semi-secular gospel of love. Her most recent book, called A Politics of Love, it was released in April 2019, quote, confronts the cancerous politics of fear and divisiveness threatening the United States today, urging all spiritually aware Americans to return to and act out of our deepest value, love. End quote. Now, throughout her decades of writing and speaking, Williamson is 67 years old, she has attracted a considerable following, particularly in the celebrity set. A 1991 Vanity Fair profile of Williamson described her this way, quote, Marianne Williamson is not only the guru of the moment in Hollywood and a growing sensation in New York, but also a leading spokeswoman for a quasi-religious phenomenon that is making waves around the country, end quote. Williamson has been a spiritual advisor to Cher. Bette Midler is a devotee. Gwyneth Paltrow, in a Goop podcast interview with Williamson last year, you really can't make this up, called Williamson a, quote, spiritual legend. Williamson officiated Elizabeth Taylor's marriage to her 7th husband, shout out to Larry Fortensky, at Michael Jackson's Neverland Ranch. Taylor and Fortensky divorced after 5 years. And most importantly, Williamson is an FOO, friend of Oprah. Williamson also had some peripheral connection to politics. In late 1994, she was one of a handful of New Age spiritual gurus invited to Camp David by Bill and Hillary Clinton as the president and first lady sought to grapple with the massive losses for Democrats, their party, in the midterm elections and try to find a new way forward over the second half of his first term. According to journalist Bob Woodward, Hillary Clinton communed with the spirit of Eleanor Roosevelt following that same retreat. 2 decades later, Williamson decided to enter politics in her own right, running for the open 33rd District in California, a congressional seat that includes hugely affluent communities like Santa Monica, Malibu, and Brentwood. How did that race go? Well, her celebrity devotees turned out in droves. Nicole Richie, Katy Perry, and yes, Kim Kardashian had all supported her in that race. Alanis Morissette, isn't it ironic, wrote a song for her campaign. This is true. It's a fact. Look it up. The song is called Today. All told, Williamson raised about $2 million for that congressional candidacy. It didn't really matter. She came in fourth in the race with nearly 13% of the vote. Congressman Ted Lieu won and still holds that seat. So 5 years after that first loss, Williamson was back at it, announcing for president in January 2019. Thanks to her celebrity in some circles, Williamson has raised more than $3 million for her candidacy from donors across the country, a total which was good enough to qualify her for the first 2 presidential debates, which is where the legend of Marianne Williamson, political oddball and maybe truth teller, has taken root. Watch 5 minutes of either of the first 2 presidential debates that Williamson has been in, and she stands out like a sore thumb. This thumb is fine. Don't worry about me. While the other 9 candidates on stage are vying to interrupt one another at every turn and deliver their scripted talking points and one-liners, Williamson is speaking in global and beyond terms. And all of it done in her totally recognizable and also totally unplaceable accent. Take her closing statement in the first debate in Miami.
So, Mr. President, if you're listening, I want you to hear me, please. You have harnessed fear for political purposes, and only love can cast that out. So sir, I have a feeling you know what you're doing. I'm going to harness love for political purposes. I will meet you on that field, and sir, love will win.
Or her invocations of dark psychic forces at work in the world and the emotional turbulence we are all facing.
If you think any of this wonkiness is going to deal with this dark psychic force of the collectivized hatred that this president is bringing up in this country, then I'm afraid that the Democrats are going to see some very dark days.
While Williamson's oddness is likely behind much of the search interest in her during these debates, she also has made several key points about the state of the country and the presidential race. So I think Williamson was exactly right when she said that you don't beat Donald Trump with a series of policy proposals alone. And her answer on reparations for the descendants of African slaves drew huge applause from the audience at the Detroit debate.
We need to recognize that when it comes to the economic gap between blacks and whites in America, it does come from a great injustice that has never been dealt with. That great injustice has had to do with the fact that there was 250 years of slavery, followed by another 100 years of domestic terrorism.
Now let's be clear. Marianne Williamson ain't going to be the Democratic nominee for president. Prove me wrong, Marianne, but she's already made the race a hell of a lot more interesting. And that is the point. We make new Point episodes every Tuesday and Thursday. Check them all out.
Okay, so who is Marianne? Well, a lot of people will tell you a lot of things, but most of the people that I talk to is all beyond positive. She goes way back to the early days of, when A Course in Miracles came out. She studied it for 5 years before somebody asked her if she'd like to teach a class in it, I think it was in the 70s. But she's been a lifetime student of it, and she'll talk about how she finally is figuring out how to implement the concepts. But she's a lot more advanced than anybody knows. And essentially, her fame was launched by Oprah Winfrey, who endorsed her book. And she's well known, especially in the Course in Miracles community. And she's got to be considered an expert there. And I listened to a lot of tributes, and one that just overwhelmed me. It was Howard Rosenman, a Hollywood producer who made a zillion films, many of them successful. And he's explaining his experience with her during the AIDS crisis. And if any of you remember back then, it was awful. It was brutal. It was there was no cure. People didn't know how it was communicated, whatever. But who dove into the middle of all of that mess was Marianne. So take a listen to Howard Rosenman on Marianne.
My name is Howard Rosenman, and I'm a movie producer. I've made over 43 movies, among them Call Me By Your Name last year, which won 204 awards, I might add. And Father of the Bride and Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Family Man, Common Thread, Celluloid Closet, blah, 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 blah. Marianne is not telling people not to take their medications. In fact, Marianne is telling people to take their medications. I've seen her. All these boys were all infected with the HIV virus. They didn't even know it. And the deaths at that time were very quick and very brutal. And all these boys were frightened to death. And there must have been hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of boys. And I went there and was listening to this charismatic woman who I knew talked our language. And she had been in the same places that we were in the 70s. So she was like one of us. She was a girl that was on the dance floor with the tambourines on her hips, dancing, singing. And she happened to be a Jewish girl from Houston and came from a kind of religious Jewish family that was very grounded and very progressive. I gravitated towards her because she was so gorgeous and so empathetic and so brilliant, I must say, and articulate. And then what happened is Marianne asked me, she had a thing called the Center for Living, which was treating these boys, Rolfing, grief therapy, a lot of them had lost their partners, massage, Louise Hay, preparing them for death in a sense. And she was so beautiful to these boys. I watched Marianne take care of these boys. I watched Marianne hold these boys. I watched Marianne cleaning up their diapers. I watched Marianne hold these boys, comfort these boys at a time when everybody was trying to stay away from anybody that had HIV because everybody was scared. They didn't know where it came from. And Marianne rose to the occasion. Marianne went right in there. She was fearless. She didn't listen to anybody. She went ahead to take care of these boys because Marianne was coming from a place of empathy and caring. She was so caring. I mean, the image that I have of Marianne, I hate to say this, I'll sound like an idiot, but like the Pietà, she was holding these boys, you know, the way the Virgin Mary held her son. And I found that so inspiring. We hear a lot of stuff about Marianne. I mean, look at her character. Look at what she's done. Look at her caring. She comes from a really good family. I've been to the synagogue where Marianne's parents and Marianne grew up, okay? They're a very solid folk. They're progressive, they're interesting. If people would only listen to what she has to say instead of ascribing these false rumors, you know. I mean, Marianne now has a red target on her back, and I warned her, because that happens with everybody. You know, people can't stand it when people become famous. And Marianne has become famous because she's preaching the gospel of caring. That's all she is. And just listen to what she has to say. I don't agree with her on everything she says, but I listen to it, and she's brilliant. And she's advocating a great way of being. And then Marianne knew that I knew a lot of wealthy gay boys, gay men, and she asked me to help raise money for the Center for Living. And so I said to Marianne, you know, Hollywood's not going to buy this hairy-fairy stuff, this Rolfing stuff, this Louise Hay stuff. They're just not, okay? I went to New York, and I went to a club, and I saw a charity box that said, God's Love We Deliver. And on it said Dr. Ganja Stone, founder. And I made a movie called Resurrection, which was about a female Christ figure, about a healer in 1979. So everybody in the spiritual world knew a lot about me. And so when I called her up cold, she knew who I was. She said, come down and see my operation. So I went down to Varick Street, and I saw God's Love We Deliver. They were making food, meals, for HIV and AIDS patients and delivering them. So I came back to LA, and I said to Marianne, is there a Meals on Wheels for HIV and AIDS patients? We did some checking, and we found out that there wasn't. Marianne came up with the name Project Angel Food, and then there were 7 or 8 of us that started Project Angel Food. And it was very hard in those days to raise money. Marianne herself would have hay rides and sock hops, and we would raise $40 or $50 a night, you know, to take care of these kids who had to eat and couldn't get out of their houses. Marianne herself did this. And then what happened is we decided to throw an art auction within 2 months, and Michael Childers, who was the partner of John Schlesinger, got all his friends from the art world to donate art. And we had this art auction, and one night we raised $1.2 million. And then Elizabeth Taylor, Barry Diller, and David Geffen all came up with a lot of money to help us. And so we were on our way. And 2 weeks ago on Friday, we served our 12 millionth meal. And that's Marianne Williamson's legacy, okay? So she was there before anybody was there. She doesn't talk about it much. She's very humble about that kind of thing.
Okay, what does Marianne believe in terms of ideas she's considering, why she's considering running for president? And she's got a lot of great ideas and over a broad range of topics, but a fair summary was her appearance on The View, a show that I watched once because she was on it. I mean, the rest of it is Whoopi and Joy Behar bashing Trump. But you'll get a good idea of what some of her big ideas are by listening to the next clip, which is her appearance on The View.
Oh, it's me? Yeah. It's me?
Yeah.
Oh. You say you're running for president to bring a moral and spiritual awakening to the country.
Explain yourself.
Yes.
Well, first of all, I don't have a problem with the American people. I think the American people are good people. The problem is that we've stopped asking the questions about what is goodness when it comes to our collective experience. Politics is too important to leave out of the great moral issues of what it means to live a good life. When you have something like, for the sake of $350 billion of arms sale to Saudi Arabia, you're willing to give aerial support to a genocidal war in Yemen.
Right.
That means we have sacrificed our moral values internationally and even domestically. When
Is this something new?
It has been a slide, Joy. It did not start with Donald Trump.
No.
This has been a slide towards almost an aristocratic situation where money is placed before people, money is placed before health, money is placed before the planet. That's been going on for 40 years. We have millions of American children. Since the 80s. We have millions of American children who live in chronic trauma, who go to schools every day, in schools where they don't even have the adequate school supplies with which to teach a child to read. And if a child cannot learn to read by the age of 8, chances of high school graduation drastically reduced, chances of incarceration drastically increased. Now, what's the response of the political establishment except to normalize their despair? We should be rescuing these children no differently than if they were the victims of a natural disaster. We should be massively realigning our resources in the direction of these children. But because they're not old enough to vote, they're not a constituency, they're not old enough to work, so there's no financial leverage. So how do they compete with the clout of all the corporate and other forms of wealth that flood Washington? We need to be in there.
Okay, so here's my question to you, because I agree with everything you just said. And it's a very, very hard road to hoe, as it were, because politics sticks its 2 cents in here. And you have no political experience, just like Trump. How do you expect to negotiate your way through Congress when you don't have any experience knowing how to do that?
I think it's almost the opposite of what you just said. I challenge the idea that people who have had years of a career entrenched in the mindset of those limitations, careers that in the system that has not mentioned those things, that has therefore driven us into this ditch, I challenge the idea that the people who took us into this ditch are the only people we should consider qualified to take us out of
But
this.
that's what Trump said. That's exactly what Trump said.
Well,
and it's not going so well with Trump.
First of all, that's like saying the Challenger exploded, so we shouldn't do space travel anymore.
But
I mean,
so are you saying that people who have worked hard for years, who have been talking about doing the very things, are you holding them responsible because they couldn't get it done?
I'm sorry, because I haven't heard this. I actually have not heard anyone in the political establishment talk about millions of chronically traumatized American children in the development.
Let me point out to you that, that one of the ways that we got things like Head Start
Yes.
and all of these programs that have sort of come through in the last 50 years are because caring people said we have to do so. I don't mean to be disrespectful.
No,
I
I
just
understand.
want to say that people have been working on these things, and we do try to bring betterment to the country and to our children. So how do you plan to do that?
Okay. First of all, Franklin Roosevelt said that the primary job of the presidency is not administrative aspect. He said the primary job of the presidency is moral leadership. So even when you talk about something like Head Start, if you compare $26 billion given alone in corporate subsidies to the fossil fuel companies last year, and you compare that to the pretty please for Head Start, pretty please for SNAP, we have such an aristocratic situation.
Right, but how are you going to change that?
You change that by awakening the American people to how corrupt this system is.
Okay, say
you
that they
awaken
know
the
this.
American people.
You sound a lot like Trump. This sounds a lot like Trump, just so we're clear. This is his message.
Well,
and
Yeah,
can
but
I
he was
say,
lying.
let me,
She's not.
Well, you're saying to yourselves, yeah, well, she's a pretty interesting person, but doesn't know much about politics and doesn't have a lot of experience in that arena, yada, yada. Let me tell you, Marianne Williamson is no shrinking violet. She has a powerful intellect. She has a reputation that would beat anybody's in terms of moral values. And if you think she can't compete, the next loop is some excerpts from her performance in the first debates. Remember that she got the most Google searches of any candidate in 49 out of 50 states. What does that tell you about we the people? So listen to her performance in the debates, and you tell me if she has a chance or not.
Ms. Williamson, this is a question for you. We've been excuse me, I'm addressing the question, Ms. Williamson. We've been talking a lot about access to health insurance, but for many Americans, their most pressing concern is the high cost of health care. How would you lower the cost of prescription drugs?
Well, first of all, the government should never have made the deal with the big pharma that they couldn't negotiate. That was just part of the regular corruption by which multinational corporations have their way with us. You know, I want to say that while I agree with, I'm with Senator Bennett and others, but I agree with almost everything here. I'll tell you one thing. It's really nice that we've got all these plans, but if you think we're going to beat Donald Trump by just having all these plans, you got another thing coming. Because he didn't win by saying he had a plan. He won by simply saying, make America great again. We've got to get deeper than just these superficial fixes, as important as they are. Even if we're just talking about the superficial fixes, ladies and gentlemen, we don't have a health care system in the United States. We have a sickness care system in the United States. We just wait till somebody gets sick, and then we talk about who's going to pay for the treatment and how they're going to be treated. What we need to talk about is why so many Americans have unnecessary chronic illnesses, so many more compared to other countries. And that gets back into not just the big pharma, not just health insurance companies. It has to do with chemical policies. It has to do with environmental policies. It has to do with food policies. It has to do with drug policies.
Thank you.
It has to do with environmental
Senator
policies.
Bennett, a question.
Ms. Williamson.
Yes, what Donald Trump has done to these children, and it's not just in Colorado, Governor, you're right, it is kidnapping, and it's extremely important for us to realize that. If you forcibly take a child from their parents' arms, you are kidnapping them. And if you take a lot of children and you put them in a detainment center, thus inflicting chronic trauma upon them, that's called child abuse. This is collective child abuse. And when this is crime, both of those things are a crime, and if your government does it, that doesn't make it less of a crime. These are state-sponsored crimes.
Congressman.
And what President Trump has done is not only attack these children, not only demonize these immigrants, he is attacking a basic principle of America's moral core. We open our hearts to the stranger. This is extremely important. And it's also important for all of us to remember, and I have great respect for everyone who is on this stage, but we're going to talk about what to do about health care. Well, where have you been, guys? Because if it's not just a matter of a plan, and I haven't heard anybody on this stage who has talked about American foreign policy in Latin America and how we might have, in the last few decades, contributed to something being more.
Senator Gillibrand.
All of these issues are extremely important, but there are specifics, there are symptoms, and the underlying cause has to do with deep, deep, deep realms of racial injustice, both in our criminal justice system and in our economic system. And the Democratic Party should be on the side of reparations for slavery for this very reason. I do not believe that the average American is a racist, but the average American is woefully undereducated about the history of race in the United States.
Ms. Williamson, hold one moment.
Just trust us on this.
The fact that somebody has a younger body doesn't mean you don't have old ideas.
No, we didn't do
and John Kennedy did not say, I have a plan to get a man to the moon, and so we're going to do it, and I think we can all work together, and maybe we can get a man on the moon. And John Kennedy said, by the end of this decade, we are going to put a man on the moon. Because John Kennedy was back in the day when politics included the people, and included imagination, and included great dreams, and included great plans. And I have had a career not making the political plans, but I have had a career harnessing the inspiration and the motivation and the excitement of people, masses of people, when we know that when we say we are going to turn from a dirty economy to a clean economy, we're going to have a Green New Deal, we're going to create millions of jobs, we're going to do this within the next 12 years, because I'm not interested in just winning the next election. We are interested in our grandchildren.
All right, we're going to sneak in a break, and I'm going to go down the line here, and I'm asking you, please, for 1 or 2 words only. All right? Please.
Really?
President Obama in his first year wanted to address both health care and climate. And he could only get one signature issue accomplished. It was, obviously, health care. He didn't get to do climate change. You may only get one shot, and your first issue that you're going to push, you get one shot that it may be the only thing you get passed. What is that first issue for your presidency? And Ms. Williamson,
my first call is to Prime Minister of New Zealand, who said that her goal is to make New Zealand the place where it's the best place in the world for a child to grow up. And I will tell her girlfriend you are so on, because the United States of America is going to be the best place in the world for a child to grow up.
And this is what this question is, which is you're likely going to have to reset a relationship between America and another country or entity if you become president perhaps because of some relationship that you just mentioned about President Trump. What is the first relationship you like to reset as president? I'll go down the line, and I'll start with Ms. Williamson.
Well, one of my first phone calls would be to call the European leaders and say, we're back, because I totally understand how important it is that the United States be part of the Western Alliance.
I'm trying to get one or 2 words here.
45 seconds for your closing
statement. I'm sorry we haven't talked more tonight about how we're going to beat Donald Trump. I have an idea about Donald Trump. Donald Trump is not going to be beaten just by insider politics talk. He's not going to be beaten just by somebody who has plans. He's going to be beaten by somebody who has an idea what this man has done. This man has reached into the psyche of the American people, and he has harnessed fear for political purposes. So, Mr. President, if you're listening, I want you to hear me, please. You have harnessed fear for political purposes, and only love can cast that out. So sir, I have a feeling you know what you're doing. I'm going to harness love for political purposes. I will meet you on that field. And, sir, love will win.
Okay, thanks for listening. I hope at least you learned something about Marianne, and we'll think about her run for the presidency. And we need all the people and help we can get. Right now, I'm going to have to go out there and fight some more in the social media front. So when I get a chance, I'll work on part 2 of this podcast. Marianne Williamson, Marianne2020. Stay tuned.